All right. We're recording, so we can start whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, and I think it's afternoon on the East Coast. I always lose track of time in our virtual business days. Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Kakamo, and I'm the CEO and founder of Up2Us Sports. And I am joined by Kim Chin, who is our program director for New York and also who oversees our VISTA program across the country with our VISTA leader, Danielle. Hi, Danielle. I don't see you on camera, but you're there somewhere. Everyone, thanks for joining us. I just want to join this call for the beginning, and then I have to actually jump to another call. But I think a lot of folks on this call probably don't know fully about Up2Us Sports. So I just wanted to take a few quick minutes to tell you who we are and then how this program came about. So I started this organization 10 years ago. And the goal was, I used to run a sports-based youth development program called America Scores for the 10 years before that. And my thought was, we all have a lot of common challenges when we're trying to use sports to, yes, someone greeted us there. We all have a lot of common challenges when we're running youth development programs. And I know not everyone on this call is a sports-based youth development program. So we do welcome you on this call. But we all have a lot of common challenges. And one of those, when I was running America Scores, was getting consistent quality staff who were at the front lines working with our kids, coaches in the case of America Scores. So I went to the federal government 10 years ago and I said, you know, there's a teaching program that challenges young adults to be teachers called Teach for America. And yet, we know that sports plays such a vital role in kids' social and emotional well-being, their life skills, their ability to focus in school. So why isn't there a coaching program? And so the federal government gave me some funds to start an AmeriCorps program, and that program became Up2Us Coach. We've provided 2,900 coaches over the last decade. That means we've gone to local programs like yours on this phone, and we've given them an opportunity to apply to have a coach. And then we spent the next few years developing how do we train that coach to be the best possible mentor in a kid's life. So we, over the last 10 years, developed the National Service AmeriCorps program focused on coaching, focused on training coaches to be great, and focus on supporting programs like yours so that all you have to do is apply and partner with us, and you can have a coach in your program who can be there every single day. We'll do all that federal paperwork, which, believe me, is a lot of paperwork. The other thing we did with our coach program, our AmeriCorps coach program, was we also did something that Teach for America, maybe they couldn't do, but we were really careful about this, and it comes from my experience. I've been in youth development for 35 years, and I always thought if we're going to create sustainable change, we really need to empower leaders within their own communities. So one of the things we always emphasized in our coach program was for our partners to hire a coach, and we'll train them and support them together from the local community who can be the best credible messenger to kids in that community about positive youth development. And so 75% of our coaches are actually from the same neighborhood where they're coaching. And so I believe that's really the future for AmeriCorps and for service, is we've got to empower all communities with the opportunities to be leaders. So with all that said, then we thought, okay, now that we're working with AmeriCorps and creating these service opportunities, and I encourage you to stay in touch with Up2Us if you don't know us year-round, so you can take advantage of all the opportunities we're providing. But now that we're doing this coach program through AmeriCorps, a lot of our programs also told us they need support with fundraising, with marketing, with research, with evaluation, and they would love to hire someone year-round and sometimes even in the summer to help in that. So we went to national service once again, and we said, now that we created AmeriCorps, we'd like to create VISTA. VISTA is the name of a separate program under AmeriCorps in which you get to hire someone, not necessarily to do direct service, but someone to help out your office. It generally tends to be college age young adults who come and they'll do nonprofit management. We use a lot of Vistas for development, fundraising, researching donors, building our donor database, marketing, helping pitch stories, call up local media. So when this COVID crisis hit, obviously our number one concern was how do we help programs, youth development programs. That's why we started this organization. That is the sort of focus of everything we do. And we thought, hey, let's call the National Service and say, can we make more opportunities available now? And if so, can we do it without a matching fee so that we can possibly make it, so we can possibly provide Vistas in this case for free to our local programs. And again, we'll cover a lot of the paperwork. We'll cover the registration, helping you get them onboarded, and let's pay them a Vista stipend. And I won't go into Kim's report coming up. And let's make this kind of resource available to your programs, especially during these challenging times. So they said yes. And we asked for 100 Vistas, which is 4 times more than we normally ask for in a given year. And they gave us 100 Vistas this summer. We are in the process of asking for even more because we know how many programs need help right now and would love to get someone who they could pay to come in and be a Vista and help this summer. So that's, I'm actually going to jump off this call and I'm still trying to get in touch with our federal agencies to see if we can get even more. But with that said, I want to tell you thank you for learning about this program. Please stay in touch with Up2Us Sports. We will be looking at providing as many coaches who are trained, as many Vistas as possible to help your program succeed, not just this summer, but into next year. And so we look forward to staying in touch and sharing opportunities for AmeriCorps and Vista in the future. But right now, we are going to share the opportunity today. And with that, I'm going to pass it to our program director for New York and our national director of our VISTA program, Kim and Danielle, who are going to go through this opportunity. And I look forward to working together and hopefully in a return to normal or the future variation of normal. I look forward to meeting you all someday, hopefully in person and not virtually. Kim, take over.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks so much for sharing all the information. So if you're in the app or on the computer, just make sure that you're in speaker view so that you can see the screen share as we're going through this. We're also recording this, so if you have any questions or you don't copy things down fast enough, we will have this recorded and available to you for reference later. So just make sure, just so everyone knows. We do have Danielle who's monitoring the chat and will help you out as much as she can in answering your questions. We will answer all questions at the end as well that if we don't answer them through the presentation. We know some people were having problems hearing, so if at any point you can't hear me or hear what's going on, Danielle will do her best to try to mitigate any technical difficulties that we have over the presentation. But just so you know, this is recorded, so you will have access to this information after this presentation. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to this presentation. We're so excited to have you here, and we're really grateful for Paul for giving you an overview of Up2Us Sports and really what we're trying to accomplish with this Summer VISTA program, because we do want to make sure that we are providing a resource for any organization that needs additional support as they're figuring out COVID and how that's affecting their organization and the next steps going from there. So we're very, very glad to have you all here to learn more about this summer program opportunity. So we'll go over like 4 main parts of the program. We want to make sure that when you come out of this, that you have a great overview of what the program will be and really the steps that it's going to take in order to like bring your Summer VISTA on if it's something you choose to apply for. So we'll go through the call for partnership, which is what we're currently in right now, the recruitment of the Summer VISTA and any deadlines that are going to be important over the next couple weeks. because this is so exciting and we got this opportunity kind of last minute, we are moving through this process pretty quickly. So we want to make sure that everyone has a full scale and scope of what's going on so that you can make the best decision moving forward. So like Paul said, we had this great opportunity from CNCS, the Corporation for National Community Service, and they have their VISTA program, which is Volunteers in Service to America. And they asked us to bring on their Summer VISTA Associates, which we are now calling the Up2Us Sports Summer VISTA Program, to help give relief to any organization, sports organizations or youth-facing organizations, or really anybody in the space who needs some support over the summer for 9 weeks in order to think about what programming will look like moving forward. This program is free to host sites. There are no costs, there's no hidden fees, nothing like that. It's completely free to the organization. And you can apply for more than one Up2Us Sports Summer VISTA as you're going through the application. So really thinking how you can dynamically use this VISTA and what works best for your organization. So like I said, the program is going to be 9 weeks. The VISTAs are going to start on June 29th and they are going to finish on August 28th. They will receive a living allowance and an education award or an end-of-service summer stipend, depending on which one they choose. They'll have an option as they're onboarding into the program. So if you aren't familiar with the VISTA program, or you are familiar with the VISTA program, traditionally this AmeriCorps program, the individuals are capacity builders. So that means they work more behind the scenes in development, marketing, programming, and they aren't allowed to do any direct service. What's really great about this summer associate program is that the VISTAs are able to do direct service. So they would be able to support your organization with programming, whether that's virtual and depending on the situation on the ground. So that is one really, really great thing about this program, is that you can use them in the traditional sense for marketing development, community engagement, or funding, or you can use them on the other side in programming to do more direct service. So these will be full-time positions, so they should be working around 40 hours a week within your organization, doing whatever support that you need. So right now, the structure of the program is remote. So unless we specifically work with you and make another arrangement, you should plan that these VISTAs will work in a remote capacity, helping with your virtual programming or joining your marketing, development, fundraising teams to help support you in a remote way. Most cities are kind of in the process of opening back up, but we want to make sure that we're keeping everybody safe, so they would be able to join in that way. Unlike their traditional year-long program, these VISTAs don't technically get any leave days, so they will follow the schedule of your office. So whatever holidays you have for the summer, they would get those as well. If your organization does summer Fridays, they would be able to have those as well, just kind of following the schedule of whatever works for you. They can apply for emergency leave if they get sick, or if there's a family illness, or if someone if there's some sort of emergency, someone passes away, they can apply for up to 5 days of emergency leave that they would be able to go. If a VISTA needs a leave day for whatever reason, they can ask for up to 2 days, but the VISTA should plan to make those up in some capacity. Since this is such a short-term program, it's only 9 weeks, we really want to make sure the VISTA is engaging with the program every day. So just making sure that you're thinking about that with the individual and talking them through that. I think there's like some slight flexibility here, but you should really think about only really allowing them to have 2 days off and being able to make it up. So for the program, there is a general what are some key terms and things that you need to know about VISTAs. So VISTAs all have a VAD, which is a VISTA assignment description. And this is a roadmap for the VISTAs terms. Traditionally in the program, each organization would make up their own VAD for their VISTA, and then they would follow that, and it'd be very specific and tailored to your organization. Because we're rolling this program out so quickly and in such a large scale, we have decided that using the VAD structure, that we're going to use one universal VAD for all the Up2Us Up2Us Sports Summer Vistas. The VAD we've created, which I'll show you in a moment, is super broad. So really anything that you're thinking this VISTA can support you in probably falls into one of these buckets. We wanted to make sure that we wanted to streamline this process first and foremost so that it was easy for you and it's easy for us and we can move through this quickly. But we also wanted to make sure that it would fit in, you know, enough of the buckets that a lot of activities could be encompassed. So over this 9-week program, you would essentially follow this VAD or this roadmap when working with your VISTA. So we did 4 main buckets. The first one is programming, and so we can send this out after the presentation, but it's really thinking about how to develop best practices or alternative programming, working with local agencies to disseminate relevant information, implement programming over the summer, help organizations like do continuation operation plans for, you know, if a pandemic hits again or what that looks like. So it could fit into programming. It could also fit into this development and emergency funding bucket, or just thinking about how you can find funding for your organization, because we know funding streams have been hit a little bit during this transition. So just making sure that you can create tracking systems, they can work with grant writing, they can manage grant calendars, looking for emergency fund, whatever that looks like. So the first 2 are programming and development. And then we're thinking about marketing and also community engagement. So, you know, if you had an event, if you're creating virtual events, if you want them to work on social media, they could fit under that bucket. And then also if you're trying to, you know, get volunteers, engage the community, refine policies for your volunteers after COVID, this would be a great opportunity for this person to fit into those 2 buckets. And so the program, like we said, is 9 weeks. And so we want to make sure that also this aligns to our VISTA program, which is a comprehensive program. So we will have some opportunities for the summer VISTAs to, you know, get some programming. So we will have an orientation in their first week. We will also do a check-in call every couple weeks with the VISTAs. So each of the VISTAs will have a point person that they will have in the Up2Us Sports community that they'll reach out to with any questions. They support the members. They're going to help them in any way they can from a support perspective at Up2Us Sports. Then we'll have some reflection logs, because we want to make sure that they're, you know, reflecting on the time that they had at the organization and the work that they're doing over this 9-week period. And then we're going to have a couple professional developments, because like Paul said, we really want to think about how we are thinking about what youth or the communities that you're serving will be and how they'll be impacted in mental health, and then what that's going to be like during COVID, but then post-COVID. So we want to provide them some professional developments as well. The check-in calls and the reflections will be probably anywhere from, you know, 15 to 20 minutes of their time during that week. Their professional developments will be about an hour. And we'll send out a more comprehensive schedule of times and who they're contacting as it gets closer to the start date. But just so you're aware, there will be a comprehensive schedule of programming for the VISTAs outside of what they're doing with you. And so we talked about the living allowance and the education awards, and I think it's just super important that we talk about this, because it affects like maybe who you're recruiting and talking about the position. So for VISTA, it's based on the poverty line of the county that your organization is in. I just did like the major cities that we have offices in, but VISTAs can serve outside of these major cities. I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of there's a range. We are going to send, when we send this presentation, but also we'll send you a sheet that you can look up the county that you're in, and you would multiply the day rate times 61, because that's the total number of days of the summer programming. So you can see that it's anywhere from slightly over $2,000 to, if you're in San Francisco, a little over $4,000. So it really depends on the county that you're in. And then in addition to that, they would get an education award or a cash stipend. So the education award is going to be $1,311. They can use that for any current student loans, past student loans, or any school that they would like to go to. They have 7 years to use it, so they do have some time to use that. Or they can choose to get $311 cash at the end of their term. That's an option or a choice that they can make as they're making their decisions about the program. Okay, so we're currently in the call for partnership timeline. So I just want to be really clear on kind of some general dates and things that will be important to you. So May 27th, which is Wednesday of next week, by end of business, we do, the application will close. And if you haven't applied by then you won't be able to participate in the program. By June 1st, you would be notified of your award. And that would just basically say, like, you know, you've been awarded X amount of VISTAs. Like I said, you can apply for more than one. We can't guarantee that you'll get your full request, but we'll try to accommodate it as best we can. So we'll be notified of that as of June 1st. On June 2nd at 2 p.m., we are going to plan to have like an orientation / MOU review. That should be about 30 minutes just to go over some general things about the program, but mostly the MOU. And then on June 2nd, after that call, we'll send you the MOU, and then you will have till the end of the week to sign it. Since there's no payment, the MOU is pretty streamlined. We're refining it right now to make it as simple as possible. For any organizations that have to like run it through legal and things like that, we would have some potential wiggle room to work with you. So just let us know as you're receiving your award letters. And so I just want to highlight a couple things about the application. It is on the SurveyMonkey platform, so you are unable to save and return to the application later. So you have to fill it out in one sitting, which can be kind of annoying as you're going through the process, but I just want to make that super clear. And we're reviewing and looking at the applications that come in. If an application is incomplete, we aren't going to review it fully. So at the end of Friday, tomorrow, and then at the end of Tuesday, if anybody has an incomplete application, we will email you just to make sure that you are aware that it's one, incomplete, and two, that you didn't plan to fill it all out. But we want to make sure that, you know, we're letting everyone know. You need to be able to highlight how you're going to use the Up2Us Sports Summer VISTA in the 4 areas. So programming, marketing, development, and community engagement. They can work in a variety of the areas. So maybe you're going to have them work in marketing and development, or communication and programming. Whatever works for you, you just kind of have to be able to talk to how you're going to use Summer VISTA. You will need to, you know, how many you're going to request. And like I said, there is, you can apply for more than one, but we aren't sure how many positions we're going to have, and we want to make sure we can accommodate as many organizations as possible. And then just really thinking about a clear recruitment plan for finding your Up2Us Sports Summer VISTA, because the VISTA needs to be through the entire nomination process by the end of day on June 15th. And we'll go through what that process means in a moment. But like I said, these are going to be pretty quick timelines. So as you're thinking about this recruitment plan, it's probably a good idea to have some ideas of who these people might be as you're thinking about this program. So for recruitment, all of the VISTAs have to be 18 years or older. We tried to talk to CNCS to see if we could get it a little bit lower to accommodate any summer programming or high school students that you typically bring on, but unfortunately they kept it at 18. They have to be a citizen or a permanent resident. And since this is going to be majority remote work, we are asking that the VISTA have access to their own computer, internet, etc. If you are able to provide that for a candidate, if there's someone in your network that you know and you want them to be a part of this experience, but they might not have a computer, we encourage you to like offer that, but we aren't going to make it a mandatory requirement that organizations are able to give that to their VISTAs for the summer. So like Paul said, we do have currently 100 summer VISTAs to place. We're hoping to expand that to be a little bit larger. We're talking to our program officer at CNCS to make that a little bit larger. You can use organizationally any recruitment strategy you'd like to find these individuals. We recommend, you know, using your network, social media, job posting, your website, alumni of your program, just anybody who you think might fit. If you have individuals who are 18 years or older within your organization that have aged out maybe, or they're in college, these might be good individuals to think about asking to come on in this process. Unfortunately, we will be able to maybe support a small amount of internal support in finding these members, but the majority of the recruitment is going to be on your organization. So like I said before, as you're thinking about applying for this, it would be great if you had some ideas of some candidates in mind. Someone actually reached out to us about some individuals at Adelphi who might be interested. So it might be in your best interest in your communities to reach out to colleges, the resource centers there, because I'm sure they have a lot of maybe recently graduated seniors or anybody really in their education system interested in finding a job or some sort of experience for the summer. So once you're in the recruitment process, you found someone, you're like, oh, this person might work. You can also follow any interview process that works best for you. You know, we anticipate these will probably be virtual, but you do have to do some sort of interview process, even if you like know them and you're like, you know, you're my coworker's son and you're great and we're just going to bring you on. You do have to do some sort of conversation about this program, explaining the stipend, explaining like the living allowance and the education award, but you also need to be able to get the answers to these 5 questions. Is the applicant currently involved in community service? Describe the work. Do they have any relevant skills? What are their weaknesses? What kind of supervision do they like? And are they available on a full-time basis? We need the answers to these 5 questions because when we nominate the individual to be a part of your organization, we have to have the answers to these questions in order to be able to do that. Cool. And then once you've recruited, you found someone, you interviewed them, you asked them those 5 questions, you're like, now what do I do? So we've broken down the steps and refined it as much as possible to make it easy for you and easy for us. So once you have a candidate and you're like, this is my person, they must apply through an opportunity listing link that we will send you. So you're like, Joe's my candidate, you send him the link, that person begins to apply through that link on the AmeriCorps website. And then when they are applying, there are some components that they will need to fill out. They have to put some basic information. They'll have to write a motivational statement. This is like a paragraph or so about like why they want to do this. They'll fill in any skills and experience they have, any education that they have, any community service work that they've done. They'll get a criminal history question. They'll ask some demographic information. And the most important thing that I think we need to highlight here is they need to have 2 references. And so thinking about who those people could be and making sure they reach out to them as quickly as possible. We do need all of these things to go through the process. So on June 1st, as soon as you receive that award letter, or you can start recruiting then to find this person. And if you have the person, you can send them that link right away and they can start the process as soon as June 1st. So once you've sent them the application link and they're started on that process, what you as a site are going to do is you are going to submit the nomination form to Up2Us Sports using a link that we will send you, and you'll provide the answers to those interview questions there. Then that's kind of when your job ends. You just have to do step 1 and step 2, send them the link and then submit a nomination form. Then Up2Us Sports will review the application, work with the individual to make any improvements, ensure all the components are complete, and then we will nominate the member. Once the member is nominated and approved, the last step is for them to accept the nomination, which we would reach out to them and just let them know an email's coming, please accept. All 4 of those steps need to be completed by the end of business on June 15th. So like I said at the beginning, we are working with a tight timeline, which is why you should probably think about having these people in your mind as you're considering this program. Okay, so like I said, you recruit your members, you interview them, you make sure you ask those 5 specific questions. Once you've selected your candidate and you're ready to move forward, they apply through the opportunity listing that you send them. You, as a host site, submit the nomination form to Up2Us Sports through the SurveyMonkey link, and you include the questions that you interviewed them about. We, Up2Us Sports, will review the application, work with the candidate, nominate them, make sure that's all good to go, and then the member would accept their nomination by end of business on June 15th. So the process of like getting the application in and nominating them can be pretty quick. I would say like 1 to 2 days. So just thinking about that window of time that you would need for them to be able to accept on June 15th. So on May 18th, this went live. So that's when we told you all about it. We're doing this webinar to make sure that you understand the program and you know what everything is and entails, so you make a great decision for your organization. You know, May 27th is the application deadline, and then on June 1st we'll send out the host site supervisor award letters, and then on June 2nd you would have the MOU/orientation that would take about 30 to 45 minutes, and then June 15th is the absolute final day to nominate a VISTA. And then on June 29th, they would start their program. So that was a lot of information in about 35 minutes. So we want to use this time, and I know the chat has had a lot of things coming through. So we want to use this time to answer any questions that you have or ask for any clarification on what you might need clarification on. Danielle, can you kind of let us know some questions that are coming through?
Yeah, so I think one of the questions is, can their organization pay them on top of the stipend?
It's a great question. So unfortunately, with the VISTA program, you can't, the individual can't be paid in cash from you additionally, but you could support them by giving them, I mean, this is not really relevant right now, but like a bus pass or gas reimbursement. You could maybe do a rent subsidy where you're helping them with their rent. You could do like food vouchers or food gift cards. You could help support them in any way that's not cash.
Cool. Another question was, can the VISTA be a previous employee, like someone who was laid off due to COVID-19?
Great question. So I think right now we are in a position to say, like, if that person feels comfortable with, you know, doing some of their role and coming back on, we would be able to move forward with them as a VISTA, just due to the current scope and situation of the program. So yes.
Another one is, can they live outside of the city they are working in?
Definitely. Since this is remote, they can live anywhere. Just when you're thinking about that living allowance, they would get the living allowance of the county where your organization is. So they could live in Ohio, but be working with Up2Us Sports in New York City. They would get the living allowance of New York City.
If the state opens back up, can they work with participants in person?
Yeah, so we are allowing, as long as you're following the guidelines of your city and you are, you know, following all the best practices and, you know, making sure that you're keeping everyone safe, then we would be able to transition into the person being in person for this program.
Great. And what is the selection criteria when awarding orgs? Do we prioritize like our partners, and will org size and budget be a part of the criteria?
Yeah, it's a great question. So when we're going to start reviewing applications next week, and we're just going to kind of look through everything, our main goal here is to really give anybody who applies access to at least one. So if that means that some organizations ask for 5 and we need to reduce to make sure that everyone can have at least one, that is going to be our biggest and main goal. And like Paul said, we are working with CNCS to try to expand our cohort so that we can allow any organization who applies more support. But it's not going to be something where our partner organizations get first priority. We're really just going to go through each application and looking at how they're planning to implement the Summer VISTA, and if they have a clear plan, and it aligns with, you know, what we've you know, put here.
And will staff be able to apply if they are on furlough?
So I think that this is something important to think about, because if you join this organization, and we talked to CNCS about this, and it's really state dependent, they may not be able to collect unemployment anymore if they apply to this program, because even though they're technically volunteers and not employees, they are still receiving some sort of like income or living allowance, and they would have to report that. So I think that's something that it might be important to look into the guidelines of unemployment in your city or state, because we want to make sure that, you know, yes, we want more people and skilled people to be a part of this, but we also want to not take away an opportunity for them to receive funds for living, because one thing about this program is that once the contract ends in August, since they technically are volunteers and not employees, they may not be able to apply for unemployment at the end of this. So just thinking about that as well.
Cool. And then, sorry, if the org has Fridays off, is the VISTA allowed to do this? And is it okay if they don't work 40 hours per week?
This is a really good question. And I think that, yes, if you have summer Fridays, then the VISTA can follow that schedule. We'll call them summer Fridays, even if you just always have Friday off. But also, so the VISTA should get as close to 40 hours as you can. I think the minimum we could go is about 30. So if you're thinking about this thinking about it organizationally, that would probably be the lowest we can go, simply because when we've agreed with CNCS, they do have some requirements, and 40 hours a week is one of them, and we want to make sure that all the participants in this program are having a similar experience. And so if you are we only have 20 hours for them or something like that, thinking about maybe they could work within 2 departments so that they can support 2 people and maybe get some extra work. Also thinking about creating a manual or something like that where they can do that at home. You could also maybe have them doing some professional development, if your organization works with a population that maybe speaks another language, having them spend an hour or 2 a day or an hour or 2 a week, whatever, working on that language, just trying to think about how you can figure out some ways to add some time into their day to work on the projects. We don't do any direct hours reporting, so this is kind of an honor system. So just making sure you're trying to stick as close to between 30 and 40 hours a week.
We have some questions around the references. So are they reference letters? And then can staff members be a reference, or does it have to be people outside of the org?
Danielle, do you know that answer? I know the first one. Yep.
When the candidate applies in the application, you'll get an email. The references will get an email, and they just respond to questions. It's not like a formal letter, just a few questions. And then as far the organization, do you know that, Kim?
So I know that the reference can't be a family member, but if they've previously worked within your organization and they can be a reference, I think that's okay. We will double check that small detail, and when we send out this information letter, we'll get the answer to that, so that you have a super clear idea of what those references need to be. And if this individual has never had a job before, I do know that they could use a professor or a teacher or someone like that who maybe has managed them or seen them work in some capacity.
Some people are asking about the living allowance. So how much are they getting per hour?
So it depends on the county. So I think the best way to do that is when you go onto that chart, you would take the day rate times 61, and then, or you could just take the day rate, I guess, and divide it by 8, and then you would know how much they're making an hour.
And then does the organization have to do any background checks or screenings?
The only screening that you have to do is the interview process. And then if your organization has any, a more cumbersome process for them to work there, I know that we have some organizations that are a part of a hospital system or school systems, and they have a more rigorous process for just bringing people into those spaces. Then the VISTA would have to adhere to those guidelines. But in terms of just like basic background checks, that's all done by CNCS.
Cool. And then someone asked if you get the living allowance if you're living at home with your parents, and yes, you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you get the living allowance no matter where you're living, and just being a part of this program, you get that, and it's disseminated and biweekly and equal installments.
Someone asked too if you can cover portions of their phone or internet bills.
Yes, but you would have to, you couldn't just like give them money, so you would have to like pay the provider. Does that make sense? We can provide some clearer guidelines on that, but if their bill's $100 a month, you just couldn't say, here's $50 to like help you. You would have to like give them a check that would go to Time Warner Cable or whoever, Spectrum, whoever their internet provider is, or whoever their cell phone provider is, and then they could use that to pay the bill.
Well, and then someone wrote that they know fingerprinting is often required for working with youth. Is that a process that could be altered at all during this time?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Traditionally, CNCS, they will do a background check on all the individuals, but traditionally in this program, they do like, they have to do fingerprinting at the police station and all that. That will not be a requirement of this program, so we would be able to move forward with them working with kids without like a fingerprint, but they will do other background checks to ensure that they, haven't done anything that would make it unsafe for them to be with kids.
Well, and then if your organization has multiple locations, can we transport them between locations?
Yes, if it's just as long as you're providing, like is being safe and in the city guidelines, like they can travel between different sites. Also, if you do have them working at different sites and they transport themselves, you could provide them as an additional funding, like mileage reimbursement or like a Metro Pass, depending on where you're located.
Awesome. And then do you know if the basic background check is just criminal and sex offender?
I think so, but let me get some clarification from CNCS, because traditionally it's all of it, but I'll get some finer details on what those background checks entail.
Okay, cool. And I know a lot of people are asking about the living allowance. We can also send the link about the rates.
Yep.
And then sorry, go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to go back to that slide. So there is a specific page that has every single county in the United States, and then the day rate for each of those counties for a standard VISTA member. So you would just take that day rate, if it's $52, and you would multiply it by 61, and then that would be their total living allowance for the whole 9 weeks or 61 days.
Cool. And then someone asked if you can just go back to where we showed the VAD categories.
So like we talked about earlier, we did 4 broad categories, and we can send that VAD for you to review as you're thinking about filling out the application. But the first one is programming. So they can do direct service or kind of, we tried to make it as broad as possible. So anything in the programming area would potentially fit into, you know, what you could use over the summer dealing with COVID, or your programming COVID, post-COVID, just kind of anything surrounding the virtual world, plus what might happen when things open back up. The second one is like the development team and emergency funding, or funding. So we tried to also make that super broad so that they can help you write grants, research, look for funding streams, anything that you might need to get emergency funding or just like general funding for your programming. And then for marketing, we also put in here like events that you may be doing digitally now because COVID made them not happen. They can do website, blog, they can copy, edit, they can look for highlights. We do on the programming side, like we're having a Summer VISTA internally implement, help mitigate the development information into like a Salesforce kind of thing. So helping with the mitigation of do programming, things like that. So you could have the VISTA fit under that as well. And then we know that, you know, not everyone is sports-based development. So we wanted to make sure that there was space for, you know, community outreach and engagement, deploying volunteers, anything like that. So if you're an organization that traditionally has volunteers, this individual could help you refine policies around like what will be your new best practices in a post when things kind of go back more to normal. You know, what does that look like in the phases as different cities are in different phases? And so we tried to make them super broad. So anything that you are thinking about would fit into one of these categories.
Cool. And then Zach asked how much time and what type of onboarding and training will be provided by CNCS and Up2Us Sports.
So we, like I mentioned, right. So we will do an orientation in the first week. So that's a really great question, Zach. So you organizationally need to also kind of think about how you can implement this person. So in that first week, you are also going to need to be able to orient them into your system. So, you know, like, what are your virtual norms? What are your expectations for the role? All those kinds of things. As we're in this new like work from home environment, schedules look kind of different from everyone, and things can be a little bit looser, but also a little bit tighter. So you need to set up an orientation in that first week to really set up norms. There needs to be someone who is supervising them through this 9 weeks. It can be a couple people, but there needs to be a general point person or point people for them to go to as they're working through these projects. I would also probably say that in the first week, week and a half, you probably need to do more of a gradual release of responsibilities. So making sure that, you know, they're really clear on your expectations and your norms. And as you're finding people, it might be a good idea to think about, you know, like, do you need someone who can like kind of get the ball rolling really, really quickly, understanding if they're more of a self-starter, if they need more individual kind of more micromanaging and how they work best. But then we will have, so organizationally and internally with Up2Us Sports, we plan to have 4 individuals who are working alongside Danielle and myself to help implement this program. So that would probably mean that each one of those individuals has around like 10 to, well, 15-ish vistas under them that they are fully responsible for helping to support over this 9-week program. So they will be able to like, they'll check in on them, they'll text them, they'll be a part of the Slack group. So we really want to make sure like we're helping them get on to the like best foot they can, but they also need to understand like organizationally what your expectations are. So we will orient them. We're going to make sure they have support, and we're going to be checking on them and communicating with them pretty frequently. But that's something to think about as you're thinking about this program. Do you have someone who can support them internally?
Cool. And then someone asked also if you can just go back to the interview questions.
Yeah, and we'll include these in the email too, so you'll have them written down. But they're pretty basic. Just seeing that they're involved in community service, what their strengths are, weaknesses, how they like to be supervised, and can they be there on a full-time basis.
Cool. And then can organizations in any cities apply?
Yeah, so organizations can apply anywhere in any city. Just the thing that's going to be different is that living allowance, and we'll send you the form so you can look up what yours is based on your county.
And can individuals on student visas apply?
So the answer is technically yes, but their visa needs to have a work piece a part of it, and you organizationally can't sponsor them, and they have to have the right kind of visa. So if that's something that you're considering, having that person to us ASAP so we can make sure that aligns. But they have to make sure that they can work on whatever visa they're on.
Cool. I think we hit all of the questions for now.
Cool. Well, if anybody has any more questions that pop up, Danielle and I are happy to answer them, and you'll have our contact information in the follow-up email from this. We'll also send out the presentation, but we're really excited and looking forward to implementing this program this summer, and making sure that you have the support you need to keep your programs operational. So thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see your application soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.